Live from SABC headquarters in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Welcome to this Thursday edition of the Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvoko, and on the show tonight, the Special Investigations Unit and the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure join hands to protect the country's multi-billion rand infrastructure program. SIU head advocate Mothibi and Public Works Minister Patricia Lille are my guests. We'll also bring you an update on the Enyobeni Tavern tragedy, as well as a conversation about the country's alcohol problem and how it's affecting the lives of our teenage population. The Watchdog starts now. Apologies for the late start. We're having connectivity problems due to load shedding. We'll start here. The Special Investigations Unit, the Public Works and Infrastructure Department, the Hawks, the NPA, as well as several professional and building industry organizations have joined hands in an attempt to protect the country's multi-billion rands infrastructure program. Today, the organizations came together to sign a pledge committing participants to the initiative. Among those that were in attendance were SIU head advocate Mothibi and the Public Works and Infrastructure Minister Patricia Lille, both of whom join us on the line. Good evening to both of you, and thank you so much for your time.
Good evening, Vuyo.
Good evening, Vuyo. Thank you very much for inviting us to the Watchdog, and good evening to the listeners and viewers.
Yeah, yes, I see you're still battling there because we still can't get you on Zoom, but we'll settle for the telephone line for now, Advocate. Let me start with you. Why is this initiative so important?
Vuyo, this initiative is so important. As we said earlier on, that it marks such a very important milestone in the country's fight against corruption, and more so because it's really taking forward the aspirations that are contained in the National Anti-Corruption Strategy, and of course also the National Development Plan. But specifically, Vuyo, we took an approach that says a sector approach to the fight against corruption will deliver the value that we all looking for. And what did we do? We went out then and established the sector approach anti-corruption forum, such as the infrastructure bill. We also have the health sector anti-corruption forum. So these two forums are really the pioneers. And the infrastructure build one, championed and led by the Honorable Minister Lille. These forums are so important because they do galvanize all the stakeholders in the specific sector, including law enforcement agencies, including government departments, including labor, business, and civil organizations, civil society. So this now really implements the whole of society approach as envisaged in the National Anti-Corruption Strategy. And more importantly, and the Minister I'm sure will also underscore that, is that over and above the reactive side of the fight against corruption, which includes investigation, prosecution, civil litigation, recovery, which of course has to be done so well. But we are now emphasizing on the proactive side, which is prevention, detection, and ensuring that we detect all of this before it happens so that we are able to sustain and not spend so much money on the reactive side of the fight against corruption. You would agree, and the listeners and viewers will agree, that it's better to really up the game on the prevention side so that we don't lose the money because it takes so much resources to follow this money, to investigate, to prosecute, and so on. So we are really delighted that we have reached this stage, we've reached this milestone. So we believe the importance of it is in both sides to ensure that we also prevent and, of course, we mete out the consequence management where there's wrongdoing and hold those who are responsible to account. Thank you.
Minister, for you, beyond the symbolism, what does today's signing of the pledge mean?
Vuyo, we depart from the point of view that corruption is another pandemic in our country. And we turned to the wealth of experience of the SIU that has been working in this vulnerable infrastructure construction sector for many years. And through 4 proclamations, they had lots of successes. Government cannot do it alone. We want to shift the focus to detect corruption and prevent corruption. We have a culture in our country that we always act after the event. And we spend millions on establishing commissions of inquiry that must then go and find the wrongdoing. We think that we need to invest more in a whole of society approach, government, civil society, law enforcement agencies, the private sector. We need to invest so that we have the necessary systems in place that can detect corruption before it happened and also prevent corruption. So under the able leadership of, as the chairperson of the Infrastructure Build Anti-Corruption Forum, Advocate Mothibi is leading the charge together with General Labia of the Hawks, civil society, the private sector, together with government. And the idea really here, Vuyo, is to say that we must all work together. So we've already started in May of 2021. And we have the forum has put all the systems in place. Corruption Watch is also a member of the forum, and they brought in their experience of detecting and exposing corruption. And we must never give up, Vuyo. We must continue to fight against corruption because corruption steals from the poor. I said to Advocate Mothibi today, we need to look at all the money that the SIU is recovering from the looting that's taking place in our country, how we can repurpose that money to do more, give more services to the poor people in our country. So I'm very hopeful that we will pioneer an approach that we can roll out into all the other vulnerable sectors. But construction is bad, is the most corrupt sector in our country.
Advocate, what are the lessons you may have learned from, let's say, the health sector forum that which presumably you are bringing to this construction sector forum?
The Health Sector Anti-Corruption Forum has also shown that it's so effective, to have a sector approach to the fight against corruption. Firstly, you're bringing the expertise in the sector to ensure that the processes are easily defined and the weaknesses are easily identified, and you are also able to define and design the detection mechanism quickly. So we have seen that work in the health sector anti-corruption. We've got those who understand the health sector, but also from a regulatory perspective, we've got the regulators also participating in these sectors. They also are able to take up matters quickly, and particularly when it needs improvement, even on the legislative side. The regulators and government, we're able to understand it quickly and get the expertise on board quite quickly. So that model has really assisted us. We believe it's a model that should be rolled out as we are rolling it out. So the infrastructure build anti-corruption forum is modeled along the same lines. It brings together all the stakeholders in the sector, those who understand the pitfalls in this sector, those who understand the modus operandi of those who really use the infrastructure build to siphon money. So we have seen it. I mean, we have said several times as this forum, and already we've got engineers, engineering council here. We've got the architects that are sitting on this council. We've got also those who are knowledgeable in the quantity surveying space. So those expertise, that expertise is brought to bear in terms of ensuring that the processes are designed appropriately and the projects that are led under the leadership of the minister. We have identified all of those projects, of course, under the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. Each project will then have to be assessed from a corruption risk perspective, project risk assessment, to ensure that we identify all of those exposures. And we really believe that this is the best way to go about it, rather than having all the sectors in one room where you continue talking past each other. You are not able to focus, and that to a large extent delays the process. So this sector approach is going to really help us. I mean, if I just give an example, I mean, we have as SIU investigated almost more than about 6,900 cases in the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. So we bring that kind of learning to the table, and the engineers are also saying that this is how we can bring value. So to up to date, the other important, if you give me, if you allow me, another important part which the Minister I'm sure will also touch on is the data analytics, and this is going to be the other way around. The health sector is going to learn from the infrastructure build forum, because we have not really gained traction on the health sector side. But in the infrastructure build, we have gained traction. We are partnering with the HSRC, Health Science and Research Council, to conduct a data analytics that is going to take all the data that SIU has got, all the data that the department has, and we are going to run an analytics. We are going to model it. HSRC has got the modeling capability, and that modeling is going to tell us the following: that there are exposures in this area of the infrastructure build area, there are weaknesses, and these are the controls that you will require. So that, in the main, is going to help us on the prevention side, the corruption risk assessment side.
Okay.
So we are really looking forward to innovative stuff that will help all of us.
Okay. Minister, what, in your view, makes the construction industry, to use your words, vulnerable and bad?
Vuyo, most of the corruption occur in the procurement side, where in the case of procurement for government will pay 10 times more to build a structure or a building than what is paid for in the private sector. So you've got inflated prices. You also find that the money will be shared amongst the groups without building the infrastructure, and we end up with a lot of unfinished buildings across our country that is not being finished, but the money is finished. So this sector has been, over the past 20 years, they have perfected the method of how to be corrupt. And so that's why this joint approach, where all of us are in one room, where we can work to the tactics and strategies, we will be able then to, with the NPA that's on board, the Office of the Auditor General is on board, the Hawks, like I said, is on board, and a number of civil society organizations. We will then have oversight over all of these investigations. Through the SIU, 242 cases have been referred to the NPA for prosecutions. So far, we had 18 successful prosecutions. So some of them are with SARS. SARS are also helping to investigate, and there are another a number of matters that's still outstanding with SAPS. Mm-hmm. So the anti-corruption, the Built Environment Anti-Corruption Forum, they are monitoring all the processes. And we also encourage whistleblowers to contact the Infrastructure Built Anti-Corruption Forum. We will protect their identities, and it will be confidential. But if they can come forward, as you know, Vuyo, if it was not for whistleblowers in our country, many of the things that we know now coming out of the Zondo Commission would have never been public. So we also will be doing some advocacy work to ensure that we bring more protection for whistleblowers. Mm-hmm. So we are very excited with what we have achieved so far. The pledge was a public commitment today under the leadership of the SIU that we are determined to take on the scourge of corruption in our country.
Mm-hmm. Advocate, let's talk about what the minister touched on. You are busy looking at irregularly awarded contracts that are to the tune of 1.3 billion rands.
Those ones.
Are you asking me or Advocate Mothibi?
Advocate Mothibi.
The SIU is busy. The process is ongoing. They are busy to recover 1.3 billion rand through the civil SIU tribunal of cases that the SIU has been able to investigate, and now they are busy to recover that 1.5 billion rand. Which, of course, once the SIU recover the 1.5 billion rand, it's going back to the fiscus. And then from there, the fiscus will then reallocate it either to public works and infrastructure or to other departments.
Yeah.
Advocates, I mean, have these investigations given you any new insights into, where the big problem is? In other words, how the system, works or gets corrupted.
Yes. For your thanks. That's why I indicated earlier on that with some of these specialists that are on the forum, we're able to even get on top of the modus operandi, the methods that these crooks and the corrupt are using. But from the investigations that we've done, where, as the minister indicated, amongst others, is that there's a widespread overpricing in this environment, yes. And some of this amount of 1.3 billion over and above the contract values, there's also huge overpricing, and then there's also a measure of collusion that we have picked up, and this, if you recall, may throw you back the experience that we have seen in the, I'm just using it as an example, in the 2010 World Cup construction. You know that that part even ended up at the Competition Commission. So the collusion that we are seeing in this sector really requires attention as well. That's the kind of experience we've seen. Some of the experience and similar to what we have seen in the PPE infrastructure investigations. The minister has already indicated that you would find projects being started and they are just left incomplete, but the monies have been paid. Amongst others, there's really a need for improvement on the side of project management itself, so that the project is managed from the beginning to the end, and the budgets are well monitored, and the project itself, from a quality and delivery perspective, is managed appropriately. So our experience is that there's a need for improvement on the project management side. It's really been poor, and the monitoring, of course, just generally.
Yes.
So to a large extent, we require an improvement, and all of those learnings, we've documented them as SIU, and we have shared them with the department, and we will share them with this forum, and just build from there to ensure that those learnings are able to help us design this detection and prevention framework.
Minister, I'm going to bring up a tweet prefacing my next question. Someone says, Daniel the Fourth says, always strategies, symbolisms, and endless signatures. Actual action, dololo. Now, the SIU has actually investigated more than 6,000 cases, and in some of those cases, departmental officials have been implicated. Have you then done what the SIU has asked you to do in terms of disciplinary action against implicated officials?
Yes, if I can give you one actual example, Vuyo. In terms of some of the private landlords overcharging government for leasing buildings from them, with the help of the SIU, we have been able to get to those companies, and we had renegotiated all of those leases to bring them within the road prescribed rates that we are supposed to pay. And just in the last financial year, we've been able to recover 273 million out of those overcharged leases, and the process is still continuing. So now we are saving money for government, and that is why we've put in some of the statistics of what has happened already, of the work that has been carried out by the SIU through proclamations from the president. But what we are saying now, yes, corruption is a pandemic, and therefore we need help. We need the help, a whole of society approach from the people working in the sector, civil society, government, the private sector. So this is a first that we are driving now, but at least we have committed ourselves today that we will continue to work together.
Yes.
So I will advise the person that sent the tweet, you can look in our statement that we issued today and see some of the successes of the SIU.
Exactly.
But Minister, has action been taken against officials who were found to have colluded with the private sector, whether it's leases or whether it's buying of property? Have those officials, departmental officials, been brought to book?
91 disciplinary cases were started. 86 of them have been completed. There are still about 5 or just more than 5 that's still outstanding. In some instances, what will happen, the alleged accused will either resign before the hearing, or they will try and drag out the disciplinary process as long as possible, or they will take the report of the SIU on a review. So it's not been an easy way to get people to be held accountable. And as you know, once they resign out of government, yes, you can pursue them criminally. That is why we have laid all of those charges with the South African Police Service, and there are over 242 cases because people just find a way of leaving. Yes, we are doing disciplinary cases. In terms of, for instance, the Bay Bridge, we report on the disciplinary matters on a monthly basis to Scopa at Parliament. And we follow up on the progress that we are making. But we also have to respect the rights of the accused. You know, they're entitled to legal representation and the unions. And so, yes, there are many disciplinary cases. Consequence management.
Mm-hmm. Advocate Mothibi, I mean, part of the problem or among the things that are making your life difficult is that you are owed a lot of money by government departments. How is from the last briefing you gave to Parliament, how big is the problem still? And I'd be keen to know whether Public Works is one of those who owe you money.
Thank you very much for that question. I mean, as you know that we do a fee-for-service model, and the last time we appeared at the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services, we showed quite a significant amount being owed to SIU. We were just yesterday, our finance department, the CFO, took me through all the status of the debtors. We are, because of the steps that we have taken, the Portfolio Committee has also really assisted. Our minister has taken up some of the steps and written to some of the executive authorities. We are seeing the money is being paid. We would like to see more. Because if we don't get this payment, although at the moment we are still financially sound, if we don't get this payment, we will see the operations of SIU being negatively affected. I'm glad to say that Department of Public Works and Infrastructure has really paid what is required. And we are glad to see that. We're hoping that some will emulate that example because it's the right thing to do. If departments can pay other service providers of the state, and I'll make an example of the Auditor General, for example, we are in the same boat. And what we have said is that our fees have been benchmarked. We believe we compete well with the market. And in fact, our fees are reasonable. Okay. But I want to just add on what the minister has said and what the tweet that you have read. We all what we have said, and since we started, and the minister is also clear on that, that we need to show results. We need to show results and investigate as speedily as possible. And the statistics don't lie. The minister has indicated all those numbers. We invite the person who wrote the tweet to go and read the statement and see the statistics and see the results.
Okay.
So we believe that we will be only be able to convert the skeptics to see that work is being done by producing the results. And those results are, as you correctly asked, are people being held to account, right? As you correctly asked, are there prosecutions? As you correctly asked, are there speedy litigation to recover the monies owed to government? The minister has indicated there but 273 million has been recovered. So we are. All I'm saying is that we will be able to convert. I use that terminology. We will convert the skeptics simply by showing the results that we are now really churning out what the public expects.
And that's where we're going to leave it. Let me thank both of you for agreeing to come on the program and enlighten us on these matters. The Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Patricia, Lille, and Advocate Andy Mothibi, who is the head of the SIU. Today, together with several other organizations, they signed a pledge committing to fighting corruption in the construction sector. Up next, we look at the country's alcohol problem and how it's affecting the lives of our teenage population. Welcome back. There's been no let-up in the investigation into the Enyobeni Tavern tragedy in East London since Sunday morning. Members of the investigating team are still on the scene, combing it for any clues. The police have also again implored people not to speculate about the outcome of the investigation, including the post-mortem results, as the process is not complete just yet. Here's an update from our reporter, Kim Daniels.
The scene of the tragedy, still an active crime scene 5 days later. Investigators going over every inch, adamant not to miss a single clue.
I must also take this opportunity to dismiss all the speculations that have been made, because such speculations have a potential to cast doubts on the investigations that are currently underway, which are being conducted by our detectives. We call for people to come forward if they have any information.
But while the investigations continue, different groups of people continue to hold services to honor the 21 people who lost their lives. This afternoon, song and praise rang out again at Enyobeni in remembrance of the departed.
Yes, we are definitely working with the families. Yesterday, we were part of a team that came to provide groceries for the families. We provide counseling to the families, and even post-funerals, we will be with the families, moving together with them.
The identification process of the 21 bodies has been completed and the remains have been released to the families. Kim Daniels, SABC News, East London.
The Enyobeni tragedy has shone the spotlight on a number of challenges facing the country, in particular young people. One of those problems is overindulgence in alcohol, especially by young, often underage people. To help us understand both the nature and extent of this problem, we have Maurice Smithers, the Executive Director of the Southern African Alcohol Policy Alliance. We also have Siamtanda Ndlela, a youth and human rights activist working with the Soul City Rise Class project. Good evening to both of you, and thank you so much about your time.
Good evening to you.
Let me start with you, Maurice, if I may. Broadly speaking, do we have an alcohol problem in this country?
We do, Vuyo. Not to say that other countries in the world don't have alcohol problems, they do, but we do. And it's a strange problem because actually only, according to the World Health Organization, only around 31% of people aged 15 and above actually drink alcohol. That's about a third of the people aged 15 and above who actually drink. But the problem is that 60% of those drink dangerously, which means they drink excessively or engage in binge drinking, as they call it. And as a consequence of that, there are all kinds of related harms to them as well as to all the people around them.
Siamtanda, what have you witnessed in your activist life?
As I would add to the gentleman who just spoke, that we have a huge problem when it comes to our alcohol And more especially in our communities, where in our townships, the youth is much more into the drinking of alcohol, and it's a huge problem. You'd find that a lot of people would drop out of school, a lot of people would get raped in the spaces where they're consuming these alcohols, when they're under the influence of alcohol. You find that there are people who are getting stabbed, and other incidents, they result to this Enyobeni incident where people would die in the places where they sell alcohol.
Of course, I mean, as you would have heard, Maurice, in my introduction, I mean, the problem of alcohol is only one of the problems that this particular episode, you know, has highlighted. There are several others, you know, licensing of taverns and shebeens, you know, law enforcement, and a whole range of other things. And really, the point of this conversation is not to pass any judgment, you know, on people. But what are the contributing factors to this alcohol problem? And I'm asking this without being necessarily judgmental.
Yeah, look, I mean, we have no problem with being judgmental, actually, particularly when it comes to the fact that people are failing our children and failing our communities in terms of protecting them from alcohol-related harm. I noticed actually in the beginning, the adverts or the beginning opening sections to your show, one of the things is talking about holding government to account, and the other is promoting the public's right to know. And both of those are really important to us. As far as this incident is concerned, clearly, the owner of the tavern and every other adult who works in that tavern is accountable, and they must be actually, if there are criminal charges to be brought, they must be brought, and they must pay the consequences, because you cannot brush the lives of 21 young children under the carpet, and if needs be, they must be charged with culpable homicide, not simply with selling alcohol to underage children. But there's a broader problem, and that is that government, society as a whole and government as a whole is not taking this issue seriously. And so we don't have effective laws. We don't have enforcement of laws. We have the challenge of advertising, which normalizes alcohol in the minds of society. We have corruption. Corruption, as you know, is a problem in many sectors of our society, but corruption is one of the things that also prevents the effective enforcement of the law. You know, what we really need is government to take responsibility as in a whole of government approach to say this is a challenge in our society and we need to deal with it. In fact, they did do that. In 2016, Cabinet actually approved a new liquor policy for the country, and that liquor policy is based on the World Health Organization global strategy to reduce the harmful use of alcohol. And that rests on three pillars. The one is limiting or banning alcohol advertising. The other is reducing the availability of alcohol. And the third is increasing the price of alcohol. And actually only through doing those three things at the same time, plus also dealing with a lot of the other challenges we have in our society, our particular society, as a result of the legacy of apartheid and the current problem of unemployment and poverty and so on, unless we deal with all those things holistically, we're not actually going to solve this problem. But it requires government to have the political will to deal with it. And unfortunately, that will has been lacking since 2016, 2017, when that new liquor policy was adopted. And in fact, when a liquor amendment bill based on that policy was drafted, approved by Cabinet, and released to the public for comment in 2016, 2017. Since then, nothing has happened. And that's the problem. And the bizarre thing is that right throughout COVID, it became clear to everybody what a challenge we had. And all of the politicians and a number of other commentators were saying we need to deal with this issue. Well, they've stopped talking about it. COVID is more or less over. They've stopped talking about it. All we're talking about is rebuilding the economy, and we are neglecting this very, very fundamental problem. And as the other speaker has said, the problem is that this is going on all the time. These challenges are going on all the time. The only reason why Inyobeni has become such a big issue, one is because it involves underage children, and two, it involves the death of so many people at the same time. But every single weekend, people are dying in taverns. Every single weekend, people are dying or being assaulted or being brutalized. Women are being raped, all as a result of the excessive consumption of alcohol. So our worry actually is that what's going to happen is there's going to be this big hullabaloo around this issue over the next couple of weeks. Then it's going to die down. Something else is going to become popular. Something else will trend on social media, and we'll all go back to normal and until the next tragedy. And we believe that is criminal, actually. And it's criminal particularly in relation to young people and to learners. And I must tell you, my last point on this is that what is most bizarre, and we have to highlight it in relation to the Inyobeni Tavern incident, is that we currently have our Department of Basic Education putting forward the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill of 2021, which is currently before Parliament. And in that bill, they are proposing that schools be allowed to sell and serve alcohol on school premises and at school functions off school premises to raise funds. And if we have a situation where Inyobeni shows us that kids are already seeing alcohol as a normal part of society, 13-year-old kids, how much worse is it going to be if this bill is passed by the Department of Basic Education, allowing alcohol to be sold at schools, which should be safe places for children and learners?
It's difficult for me as I'm trying to, I don't know how to raise this, but there's a video that has been doing the rounds of what looks like underage young people. They were passing around like expensive bottles of alcohol, and it was a mix of from cognac to vodka and they were drinking it, like passing it like.
Yes,
you've seen that, yeah. Yes, and often, I mean, these young people, this alcohol is bought by older people, some of it through or via proceeds of crime, you know. So these young people have this access, you know, to this expensive alcohol, even if you were to, you know, increase the price, as we were talking about earlier. And we know that often it's because these people want sexual favors in return. They're not just giving these young people alcohol because they you know, they're expecting favors in return.
You know, as Maurice has said, that this problem of excessive drinking is too much, and we should also blame the society. The society has made it seem very normal for people to drink alcohol, consume alcohol. It's either when they are celebrating, when they are grieving, and the children are growing up in the society, seeing all of that. It's like they are groomed to be using alcohol all the time. They are always around people who are drinking. So we are to blame when it comes to the society in what happened in that area, because now our children are growing up around this environment of drinking left, right, and center, and it's very much problematic. It's affecting our kids at school. It's affecting their health. it's just too much, Vuyo. It's too much. And, you know, we have that thing of saying that it's only their parents who are supposed to be responsible for this, but it's not only their parents. When we're bringing it to ourselves, especially in the black communities, we believe that we carry that spirit of umuntu. So we are supposed to be guiding our children towards everything that they are doing, especially when it comes to this issue of alcohol. Community members in the area of Enyobeni, whether it's the Enyobeni tavern, they were supposed to have reported this matter to the police when they are seeing underage children going into that place. So the community or the society kept quiet, or they turned a blind eye to this problem. That's why we are sitting with this issue of young children ending up dying in the tavern.
Mm-hmm. Maurice, Siamtanda talks about society and its role. You spoke earlier about legislation and what happened to that amendment bill. What else do you think, or where, for example, there's been good practices, say in other jurisdictions or countries? What are the other things that they have done to help curb the problem of excessive consumption of alcohol?
Well, what we know is that around the world, the very mechanisms that are being used are the ones I mentioned before. Is the three key ones, which is the advertising, the increasing the cost of alcohol and reducing availability. But they have to go in tandem. You can't do the one without the other. Some people keep saying, should we be increasing the age of drinking to 21? Yes, we should be. And that has actually been recommended in the National Liquor Policy of 2016. But you're not going to change anything by simply changing the age of drinking, nor in fact are you going to change anything just by changing legislation. And one of the key problems we have, and see, I'm trying to refer to that, about the community should be reporting these issues. The reality is that, Vuyo, is that the constitution of our country says that the three spheres of government have a responsibility to make it possible for citizens to engage in participating in the issues of governance of the country. So in other words, they have to make it possible for people to participate, to have a voice. The legislation that we have in national legislation and local and provincial legislation around alcohol actually provides people with an opportunity, for example, to object to an application for a liquor license if they think that that license should not be awarded. And by the same token, there are mechanisms in place where the citizens should be able to report issues to the police and to the liquor boards and should be heard. But the reality is, if you go to the Eastern Cape Liquor Board website right now, and I will credit the Eastern Cape Liquor Board for having a website, because here in Gauteng, the Gauteng Liquor Board doesn't even have a website. So there's no channels through which anybody can find anything about the Gauteng Liquor Board. But in the Eastern Cape, they do have a website. But the information that is on that website is addressed to people who want to apply for licenses. Mm-hmm. There is nothing on that website that encourages people to exercise their right to object to an application for a liquor license, nor is there any indication to them as to how they can object to how a liquor outlet is operating, a licensed liquor outlet is operating, and what expectation they have that the liquor board will deal with that place appropriately. And until we have that in place, until we have mechanisms in place that citizens themselves are able to protect themselves, nothing will ever change. Okay, we're going to leave it there for this evening. And let me thank both of you. Maurice Smithers, who's the Executive Director of the Southern African Alcohol Policy Alliance, as well as Siamtanda Ndlela, a youth and human rights activist working with the Soul City Rise Class Project in the Eastern Cape. That's all we have time for. Thank you very much for watching. To join us again tomorrow night, same time.